everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you. How are you doing?
Good, Dr. Paul. Happy Monday. How are you?
I'm doing fine,
Good.
and it's a happy Monday. Let's keep it that way.
Yes.
So search it out, and we have a lot of points to make, a lot of things to discuss and have an opinion of. Fortunately, we haven't seen a whole lot of progress, but we found some things that we can say people are waking up. But I want to start off with a comment from our famous doctor, Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
You know, he's at it again. He's expressing his opinion, and I don't know how he ever gained it. Since he's so famous and so rich and so well known and quoted so much, I wanted to check and see what medical school he went to and how many patients he had seen. You know? But we won't challenge him on that because we'll have somebody else challenging what's going on. But the article we spotted there that got our attention gets right to the point. Dr. Fauci says we should prepare to hunker down again.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's just what we need. Here's how to mentally go through fall and winter. So he's telling us it's coming. You know, there's going to be some statistics that we'll have to recite here, fake statistics, and they'll be going there. And now you got to be prepared. Flu season is coming, and we've conquered that because we have a great vaccine. Except the numbers don't exactly say that.
Yeah.
So he's at it again. But most of that, I would say, Daniel, the way I look at that is part of the big pictures of keeping people just a little more frightened than they need to be, or a lot more frightened than they want to. So there's other people that have offer up a different solution than scaring the people into hunkering down and give up all their freedoms.
Yeah, there are, and it seems like any time that attention starts to wane from Fauci, he'll jump up and say something to get everyone's attention, and this is nothing different. We need to hunker down and get through the fall and winter because it's not going to be easy. That's what he said. But here's something else that he said. This is so characteristic of his approach. Don't ever underestimate the potential of the pandemic, and don't try to look at the rosy side of things. That's what he said. Don't you dare. But the article we noticed is how to get through this. This is some helpful hints from CNBC to get through the dark days that Fauci's predicting. And we might take note of these. This might not all be bad, Dr. Paul. Wake up at a normal time.
Right.
Get some light. Find a way to be comfortable outdoors, because, you know, the Rona's everywhere. And the other one I found sort of funny but sick. Find a hobby. You know, people are at home because they've lost their jobs, because they're not allowed to work. Hey, go find a hobby. What's the big deal, you know? So it's amazing. But there is another group of doctors that are out, and we noticed this article today. It's a fascinating article, and it's a group that are extremely well-known epidemiologists. They met in Massachusetts a couple of days ago to put up a different response. And I'm going to kick it over to you, but let me just read their background really quick. Dr. Sunetra Gupta is a professor at Oxford University, an epidemiologist with expertise in immunology, vaccine development, and the mathematical modeling of infectious diseases. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is a professor at Stanford University Medical School, so he'd be a colleague of Dr. Atlas's. A physician, epidemiologist, health economist, and public health policy expert focusing on infectious disease and vulnerable populations. Dr. Martin Kulldorff, professor of medicine at Harvard University, biostatistician, epidemiologist with expertise in detecting and monitoring infectious disease outbreaks and vaccine safety evaluations. These are the three doctors that we're talking about today. Nobody can look at their bios and say, oh, they're a bunch of kooks.
Right. You know, you mentioned one thing there that caught my attention, the rosy side of things. We can't let that break out. And, you know, that made me think about what medicine is all about. You know, it's science. You know, people get sick, you make diagnosis, and you get a proper scientific solution to it. But I also endorsed, and many people have been taught, and most people understand that attitudes are crucial. You know, if they're intimidated and scared to death and think they're going to die, it's a very, very negative thing. So it's something that he almost wants them to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
But, you know, whether the person has cancer or whatever, attitudes make a lot of difference. I'm convinced more than I ever dreamed of when I started medical school, because I thought it was all ABC, give them an antibiotic and it'll be better. But it's the attitude, and it seems like the media has participated in this attitude of hysteria. So we're dealing with the main problem is an organized effort to get the people hysterical and not reasoning, and that's why this report by these three doctors is so important, because they take a different attitude, and they're a couple years younger than Fauci.
Yeah.
You got to be a little careful with those old guys. So that's very good.
Well, some of the main points of what they're making, they put together a sort of a whole plan of let's have a different approach to getting over this. And they're not deniers in any sense of the way, and they're not anti-vaccine whatsoever. But one of the first points they make, and maybe we'll comment on this, is that the current lockdown policies are producing devastating effects on short and long-term public health. The lockdown policies, not the virus. The results, to name a few, include lower childhood vaccination rates, worsening cardiovascular disease outcomes, fewer cancer screenings, deteriorating mental health, leading to greater excess mortality in years to come, with working class and younger members of society carrying the heaviest burden. So they're saying that the lockdown, not only is it not working, it's actually counterproductive and it's killing a lot of people.
Well, it builds because it has the economic consequences. And that, of course, when you lose your job or lose your business, that's going to contribute to it. And they don't seem to even calculate that. I think at one time, Fauci, I didn't think about that.
I didn't think about that, when they asked about the lockdown.
And it might be the key to it. You know, the other way is the other, you don't want to be naive and say, well, there's nothing to it. But if you say that, if you look at it that way and you just lose all hope, you might not go out and get a job. You know, that job doesn't pay as much, and besides, my check's coming next month. So it hasn't been the best thing. So this is something we have to contend with, but we're delighted that we have these three experts come forth and give another answer. But I don't think they're going to get on the evening news. You know, their credibility is much too good to start confusing the people with the truth. You know.
Well, they're going to. The mainstream is going to try to ignore it as much as possible, but these people you can't put in a box as being kooks, and several of them I know have consulted with Dr. Scott Atlas, who's very close to the president now, and maybe now that the president seems to have gotten over COVID or the worst part of COVID, maybe he'll be listening to people like this even more. But one of the points that these three doctors make is that keeping the measures in place that we have, keeping Hunker down and lockdown until a vaccine comes, is, they call it, it will cause irreparable damage, with underprivileged disproportionately harmed, hurting the most vulnerable sectors of society. But then they point out that we know now, and this is something that Fauci can never get around, we know a lot more now about the virus. Even if you give all these doctors a benefit of the doubt, who were so wrong up front, we know so much more now about it. Even laymen like me know more about it. And we know for a fact, and this is what the doctors said themselves, the vulnerability to death from COVID-19 is more than 1,000-fold higher in the old and infirm than the young. And then this is a good point that you'll never hear in the panic about whether we should send the kids to school. Indeed, for children, COVID-19 is less dangerous than many other harms, including influenza. Less dangerous than influenza.
And that's the message that people should respond to and help take care of this hysteria that they promote. You know, we've talked a whole lot about the economic consequences of lockdown, but that's ongoing, and so often the people promoting this scaremongering stuff don't know about it, don't care about it. But there's a case that we just read about today, a story on the movie theaters. I think it's Cineworld, a British company, and they have 500 theaters in this country.
The second largest chain,
the second largest in the world, I guess. And they're going to. It looks like they could be closed down.
Yeah.
And how are we going to have recreation if we can't? Well, we've already been denied the recreation.
Yeah.
If you can't go to church, you certainly can't go to a theater. You know, so they're not going to allow it. But the economic consequence is very, very great. You know, if they're going to lock down. And one thought that came to my mind on this is, it is the coronavirus which is the real clincher and the real death blow to these companies. But there's also another another issue that makes it less able, the company's less able to recover, and that is the principle of malinvestment. You know, for years and years, our interest rates have been too low. They put a lot of money in, buy. It's, you don't cost anything. Interest rates are 0%. Buy a house, buy this. So 500, I don't know whether that's a good number or not. Nobody knows because only the market can tell. But when there's that much activity and it's all built on lower interest rates than normal, this means there probably could have been an amount of malinvestment in there. And maybe the market, if that had to borrow the money from you and I as we put it into our bank account, there might have only been $250 and the harm wouldn't have been quite as bad. But nevertheless, you can't belittle the coronavirus. That's the precipitating event. But we've talked about this before, it's not just coronavirus, it's not just Black Lives Matter rioting in the streets, and it's not just, the Federal Reserve. But nobody even talks about the Federal Reserve, how they've set this up, and then they come in with this artificial effort to just close down the whole system. And, every once in a while they'll say, well, the stock market's up. But I tell you what, I think there's a lot of errors built into the system that nothing really happens until those errors are taken care of, that they're eliminated and people can go back to work again. Because right now, when they pass money out, from helicopters, and it looks like they want to do it differently now. They want to even do it faster with a digital currency and just send it to their account, which I think is not that dissimilar than them sending digital. That's how they send the money out to individuals. They just send it to their accounts.
Yeah.
So that is not going to be a solution. It's a temporary thing that makes the conditions worse, and that's where we are today.
And that's what's been missing in the public policy aspect of this whole thing, and that's what these doctors finally addressed. And let's look at a couple of clips. And I think we got a little, if we've got the next one up here, these are the doctors that we're talking about. And I'm just going to, here they are now. This is the great article, Unheard. Take a look at that. And skip the next one and go to the next one, I think, actually. Here's the theaters, but we could turn that off now. I want to just do one more thing about the doctors before we go even further into the economic costs. And that is what the doctors say is that now that we know so much about it, we know who's vulnerable. They say people like those in nursing homes, they should have less rotation of staff. The staff should be tested to show that they have reached that immunity status so they're not passing it on, they've gotten over it. And also retired folks should be able to have their groceries delivered and these kinds of targeted things. But this is something that we've been saying a while, but they have better credentials certainly than I do. But this is their conclusion. Those who are not vulnerable should be immediately allowed to resume life as normal. Simple hygiene measures such as hand washing and staying home should be practiced. Schools and universities should be open for in-person teaching. Extracurricular activities such as sports, which you talk about a lot, should be resumed. Young, low-risk adults should work normally rather than from home. Restaurants and other businesses should open. Arts, music, sport, and other cultural activities should resume. People who are more at risk may participate if they wish, while society as a whole enjoys the protection conferred upon the vulnerable by those who have built up herd immunity. And earlier in the article, they say this can be aided by a vaccine. They're not against that at all. But ultimately, what gets you over a virus is when you reach what's called herd immunity, community immunity, or any such thing. So they're basically just saying what we've already known, and here's a better way forward with it. So let's move to the next one just for a second, then we'll move on. The economic costs of, and here's one that I saw, Dr. Paul, that I wanted to throw up here for your comment, because you talked a lot about the cruise ships, and you were very optimistic a couple of months ago when they opened up for possible bookings,
right,
and everyone ran for bookings. Now they're taking them and they're dismantling these ships for scrap metal.
You know what this made me think of? They'll even block the escape routes.
The escape routes. Yeah.
You know, that's the way a totalitarian does. So if people want to escape and go out on a cruise vessel, they're not even going to allow that.
Yeah.
So that is one thing they could control, and people could do that. And what a shame that is. So, and that has a lot of ways to go on that. I think that downturn in the economy is just really starting, and most of it is being hidden because they can give this statistics, you know, that, oh, there's more jobs now, the rates are going up, you know, and the stock market's doing well. But that just kidding yourself doesn't mean that you can kid the economy and kid the people and kid those that are looking for jobs and they can't find it. Because right now it's turning downward because they haven't resolved this whole concept of what's going wrong.
Of course, Cuomo says it's all Trump's fault, the fact that New York is in the toilet in its economy. No, you shut the whole thing down. But here's another one in our sort of subject of economic costs. Just put this other one on. This is, you know, Hawaii was always referred to as paradise. You know, it's the land of milk and honey. During the pandemic, the Food Basket, which is what, you know, a food charity, is serving 80,000 people a month in Hawaii. It's one of the strongest lockdowns in the United States, Dr. Paul. Extremely tough lockdown. People are virtually prisoners in their house, and you think they must be just dropping in the streets. Let's do another reminder of what's actually happening in Hawaii. Here's yesterday, total daily deaths, 6, and that's a particularly bad day. They simply are not, they have whole months where there's no one dying. And you see that big line, that's probably, that's 11 people in the entire island chain of Hawaii. And for that, they've destroyed their economy, they're destroying people's lives.
Well, we'll have to go maybe to Argentina.
Yeah.
They've had down for 200 days they've been locked down. So I'm sure that must be paradise by now. But you know the answer. It didn't work. Things are bad, and yet they still never wake up. I don't know, are they going to go 200 more days? But that, and you wonder why. And we do it here in this country, but people are objecting and starting to rebel more than they have. But it's amazing that people are so complacent, you know, and to go along. And then they always wonder, how did it ever happen? How did the tyrants get hold of it? Well, they didn't do it. It's so clear-cut. It isn't done by people invading with tanks and trucks. It's done by the American people or whoever's involved. The people capitulating and saying, please take care of it, take care of me, make me safe, provide for me. And so far, there's still a lot of people that want that because right now, you know, the Congress is they just passed another bill that they think $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. It's soon going to make the economy healthy. And unfortunately, it makes things worse.
Yeah, like you always say, it's like a dope addict. You're giving him more dope. But, you know, it's good that you mentioned Argentina because a quick look at that next clip. They are the strongest lockdown nation in the world. This just proves, I mean, contrast their approach to Sweden's approach. They locked down the hardest, 200 days. It's the longest lockdown and the tightest lockdown in the world, and they have the absolute worst deaths and infection rates in the world. So contrast that with Sweden, with South Dakota, with Belarus, places that didn't lock down. It's absolutely obvious. That's why they don't want to talk at all about it. And here's this next one really quick before we go into one of our favorite governors. Let's look at this next one really quick, Dr. Paul. I haven't showed this to you, but you'll see it immediately. This is Ireland and Sweden. Sweden is the blue and Ireland is the red. Both of them had a peak. Ireland's was a little stronger, but both of them are basically at the same point. What's the difference right now? Ireland, at the same spot where Sweden is, which is virtually no deaths from COVID, is going into lockdown level 5, China style. You can't even get out of your house. Don't dare to breathe without a mask on. I mean, it's amazing when you're seeing no deaths at all and you're seeing the hysterical reaction of European governments. At what point are people going to really rebel against the destruction of their lives?
Well, this point that I'm going to make here might mean that they're starting to be concerned about the people who are getting ready to rebel, and that has to do with WHO. Their announcement, their hysteria for the day or for the week. They're claiming 10% of the world's people may have been infected with virus. The first thing I thought, yeah, they may have been, but they may not have been. Yeah. You know, and then you have to go into what does infection mean. You know, if you're recorded as positive, that doesn't mean that you're a problem to yourself or to anybody else. It means when you get sick and have to see a doctor, that's a different story. That's a case.
Yeah.
But this is right out there. The big headlines: beware, it's getting worse. So 10% of the population of the world, they said that's what's going to happen. May have been infected. Oh, it's not a big deal. 760 million people. So you be scared. Be scared. we need more information from those 3 doctors that bring back sanity and an understanding about what these numbers mean.
As someone else pointed out, when you actually look at these numbers, if you take the numbers for face value and then, 10% infected, and then you look at how many have actually died, that's not actually worked so good for the lockdowners because it shows that it's 0.1% fatality, about the same as a bad flu season. So in a way, their own numbers are damning what they're trying to do to scare people away. So it's that's interesting. But we do have a little bit of good news. We got to have a little good news, especially on Monday. We don't want to get depressed. This is in Michigan, where the lockdown was horrible. It's one-woman rule. The governor there is an absolute tyrant. Remember, at the early part, she said, "You can't even buy plants for your garden. Don't you dare." She got a smackdown over the weekend. The Supreme Court of Michigan ruled that her one-person rule, her Mussolini rule, has come to an end. You're going to love this quote. The Michigan Supreme Court, in its Friday opinion that limits the governor's emergency powers, they quoted Montague, quote, "When the legislative and executive powers are united in the same person or in the same body of magistrates, there can be no liberty." That's a great quote.
Boy, that applies to our federal government.
Yeah.
Because I've always complained about, the executive branch, the bureaucracies, and all the regulations they write. They write a lot more laws than the Congress does. It's a default by the Congress that allows this to happen. But isn't it nice that the courts ruled, but they did have one body, I guess it's the Senate, is still Republican, and that held for a balance. But don't worry about it. The other side's prepared. The government says, we're not going to pay any attention to the court ruling. Well, if she continues to do that, I don't think the people in Michigan are going to stand for it.
But it is amazing. It's the story of this whole thing. It's the story of the state legislatures, the local legislatures. Literally every legislative body in this country simply walked out and said, we give up. I mean, here in Texas, everyone is begging for a special session to try to limit the governor's powers to rule by diktat. But nobody is waking up. Nobody's doing it. Nobody seems to care. And when you have, like they said, when you have one-person rule, it really is a recipe for disaster. So Whitmer is claiming that she doesn't care. She's going to ignore it. We'll see what happens. She's got 21 days. They've given her 21 days before they say your power is gone. They take away her golden ring, and let's see what she does after that.
I'm sure this will shock you, but Murray Sabrin, a friend from New Jersey, who's been in politics up there, he sends this message. He's a reliable person. I don't know whether this is an absolute, but this is his opinion and the way he sees it from his viewpoint. And I happen to think it's very possible.
Yeah.
Get your opinion. And the statement is, most New Jersey mail-in ballots are fraudulent.
Wow.
Can't believe that. I mean, that means the whole election's fraudulent. I wonder if it could happen at a national level. But if you suggest that, they'll haul you off and put a white coat on you and lock you up someplace, if you say. And I've told this story before on this program. My first election in 1976 involved, a lot of fraud, and we identified it, but it was thrown out in the courts. And that was way back when Texas was, it was in the period of time when LBJ was around, and he knew something about such an election. So, but that's another big if what happens now. If we win some battles here, the opposition now is going to set the stage for no matter what happens, it's going to be illegal. I mean, they're already working on that. We thought it was bad last time. The plan for a coup happened even before the swearing in.
Yeah. Well, things have gotten so insane in this country now that if you actually are caring about the legitimacy of these ballots, you're just a Trump supporter, I mean, that's how divided and ridiculous and absurd. It's just sort of funny that we go around the world telling everyone else how to have election. We seem to be the worst at doing it properly and doing it, in a free and fair way. But I was going to close on my end if you're ready, and I'll just do my last picture because let me tell you, Dr. Paul, this has been a crazy weekend for us at the Ron Paul Institute. If you can put up that last clip. Your new book, The End of Unearned Opulence, we're offering it the entire month of October as a thank you for people who join or people who support the Institute at a $50 or more level. And at $100 or more, it'll be a signed book that we'll send out to them. Over the weekend, they were coming in so fast, we couldn't even keep up with how many people are dying to get this book. They want to see the book. They're fascinated to hear what you have to say. They want to support the Institute. So I want to thank all of you who have made your tax-deductible contributions to the Ron Paul Institute. I will put a link in the description after the show's over of how you can find more information to get a copy of this book as our thank you for supporting what we do, supporting the Ron Paul Liberty Report, the Ron Paul Institute, and everything we do. But everyone wants to read this book, Dr. Paul, so you should be pretty happy that they're dying to read this thing.
Very nice. Thank you for that. And I want to close with this, trying to get a better understanding about why people react in certain ways. And one is we've had the Russiagate, and I think most people who are halfway honest with themselves will have to admit that the shenanigans were very bad, and that there was an attempt to frame the president and all that, in spite of his shortcomings that we point out too. But this was over the top, and and the people are saying now that this is going to happen again. It's an illegal election, and on and on. And now that the president's been sick, actually we don't know how sick. He looked okay to me yesterday. But anyway, no matter what, if he were sick and got better, he's going to be condemned. No matter what happens, and they've come down very hard. But there almost should be a limit, or there should be, but it's a moral problem here, and that is how hard you hit a president like this with expression of your hatred. I had that one article, I sort of showed it to you today, but it was too long. It was 2 pages long of the well-known individuals, mostly coming from the left or Marxism and this sort of thing, why they hated this man, wished he died, and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, boy, this is horrible. Then we have the shenanigans that went on with Russiagate. And the one thing that dawned on me is it happens, and I think the evidence is very clear now on what happened in the Hillary campaign and what was going on with all this. But one thing that never seems to happen is the individuals who are caught cold-handed, involved in this, they never show shame. There's no shame. And I think that is really good, because their whole moral structure is stuff that they've turned it around in their heads that there's nothing to be shameful for. We're doing God's work. I mean, this guy is, the devil. We need to kill him. And if the virus can do it, we'll do it. It is really bad. So that's why, when I wrote about the bankruptcy, I said the bankruptcy is one thing, spending too much money in the military-industrial complex and all, but it's also a moral bankruptcy. And I think that's what we're seeing here today. So even if we win a battle here and there, we can't let up. We do have to be able to define and defend our position from a moral viewpoint on why people shouldn't commit violence against somebody else, because it's no more complicated than that. You shouldn't lie, cheat, steal, or kill. And if you can get more people to agree, you have a peaceful society. And the other thing that I look at all the time, and it still is bewildering, and there's a little bit of an explanation about it. The people I see, the people I come in contact, they're still pretty nice people. When I'm out walking in the morning, some I recognize, some I don't, but they're all seem so decent. So I think the large majority are decent people. I don't think the large number of 18 to 21-year-olds who have to go off and fight and die in senseless wars, I don't think they wanted to start the wars, but we're too complacent and we put up with it, and that's why we have to have a strong principle of standing up against the tyrants, and that is our greatest threat right now. And there'll be some indications on how powerful the tyrants are, because what if there's double or triple the number of Marxists in our Congress after this election? That would be scary. That would be, that's only 5, 10, or 15 of them. But I'll tell you what. And the other thing is you can't say, they say we don't get too many. That's all right. Yeah, but what are you going to do with those who are in our universities, where all these young people are being taught about the evils of freedom and liberty and private property? So it's a big issue, and it should get our attention, and we should understand the issues well enough to actually enjoy spreading the message, because I think that's the only thing that can combat with this, because I don't think that all of a sudden the people are going to be, hopefully not, just solving all these problems with their guns. I mean, it may come to that, but it doesn't need to be. It just has to be solved by common sense and understanding the moral principles of liberty. That does not seem too difficult. And that is why we believe here at the Institute that if we do believe that way, the Institute for Peace and Prosperity will be successful in bringing about peace and prosperity. I want to thank all of you for joining in and supporting us in our efforts, and please come back to the Liberty Report soon.